Raymore City Council meeting. Call roll to confirm a quorum.
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Here.
Councilmember Boehner.
Here.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Hubach.
Present.
Councilmember Kellogg.
Present.
Councilmember Moorhead.
Present.
Councilmember Stevens.
Present.
Mayor Kirkhoff.
Present. We do have a quorum. Everybody please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. We do have some presentations tonight, beginning with the oath of office for Councilmember Burke.
Thank you.
The next oath of office is for Mr. Nigro. There you are.
If you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, state your name,
I, Ross Nigro,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
for the office to which I have been appointed,
for the office for which I've been appointed,
and that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Missouri,
and of the state of Missouri,
affecting charter cities
affecting charter cities,
and all of the ordinances of the city of Raymore,
and all the ordinances of the city of Raymore,
and that I will faithfully discharge my official duties
and that I will faithfully discharge my official duties
in the office of municipal judge
in the office of municipal judge
for which I have been appointed.
for which I have been appointed.
Congratulations.
Mr. Westcoat. Brian Westcoat, an appreciation and recognition for your dedicated service and commitment to the city of Raymore as council member for Ward 2, 2011 to 2014.
You know, I'm kind of jealous. You know, I don't have an entourage. You know, when I got here, originally there were just 2 or 3 of us sitting over there, and I'm like, okay, the politicians are on this side, and everyone else is on this side. So I do want to say a couple things. First of all, I want to thank the constituents of Ward 2 who elected me. I would not have been here without them. I want to thank my family, especially my wife, who allowed me to serve. I want to thank all the council members who are seated there. It was truly a pleasure to serve with each one of you. I also want to thank our staff. The level of professionalism in this room is truly outstanding. And I think Raymore is in great hands going forward. I'd like to share a little wisdom with you as I leave. Just some of the things that I've learned while I was on the council. You know, the first is when we're looking at ordinances and bills, never just look at the immediate impact. Always look to see what happens 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Look at the long-term effect of what we do. Never be afraid to disagree. You know, iron always sharpens iron. And I know that some of the disagreements that I've had as a council member, I'm better off for it. Also, never be afraid to ask at what cost. You know, never be afraid to say, show me the numbers. As other people who are numbers people, I know that you guys will carry that tradition. I want to say that it was truly a privilege serving with 7 other people who are truly dedicated to the people and their constituents that they serve. It was an honor. So.
And as he's finishing that, we have another thing here. Municipal Government Institute hereby designates Ryan Westcoat Certified Municipal Official. Well, there you go.
Thank you, sir. I'm not going to say anything with this one.
Ms. Lett? Stacy Lett, an appreciation and recognition for your dedicated service and commitment to the city of Raymore, Missouri as our municipal judge, 2011 to 2014. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank each and every one of you and everyone in Raymore for the privilege and honor to serve each and every one of you. And this will be the first time in history a lawyer will speak shorter than anyone else. But thank you, and you've made a great choice with Ross Nigro. Thank you.
We'll move on to selection of Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Kellogg.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to,
Nominate.
nominate. I was going to say appoint, but that's not my ability. I'd like to nominate Ms. Abdel Gawad for Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Mayor, I nominate Derek Moorhead for Mayor Pro Tem.
Any other nominations? Seeing none. Roll call.
By roll call vote, Councilmember Abdel Gawad,
I'll vote for myself.
Councilmember Boehner,
Moorhead.
Councilmember Burke,
Moorhead.
Councilmember Holman,
Councilmember Moorhead.
Councilmember Hubach, Councilmember Kellogg,
Abdel Gawad.
Councilmember Moorhead,
Moorhead.
Councilmember Stevens.
Moorhead.
By a vote of 6-2, Councilmember Moorhead.
All right, we have no personal appearances this evening. Move on to staff reports, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Ms. Warner to make a staff report from the City Clerk's office.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Council. A couple of meeting announcements. I know you've heard them before, but you're going to hear them again. Is the Cass County League of Cities meeting on January the 21st to be held at the Cass County Courthouse. And the reminder also of the MML Legislative Conference, February 10th and the 11th in Jefferson City, Missouri. If you're interested in attending either one of those, you can let the city clerk's office know, please. Thank you.
And just to dovetail off Ms. Warner's report, just a reminder to the council that on the night of the 10th at the MML legislative meeting in Jefferson City, we then, all of the Cass County cities, meet with our legislators at dinner that evening for a more casual atmosphere discussion, if you would. With that said, I would ask Mr. Krass to make a report for the Public Works Department.
Thank you, Mr. Fairborn. I've submitted my written report, and I just have a couple of updates for that. We are going to be receiving bids for the farmers market improvements this week, and we'll be bringing that forward shortly thereafter for council consideration. And also want to remind everybody that tomorrow we are going to be relocating a water main in the 1000 block of Johnson Drive as part of the stormwater improvement project. That is going to require that we shut the main off, and that will result in some service disruptions and some low pressure in the area. We apologize for the inconvenience, and hopefully the contractor will get that work done fairly quickly tomorrow. And that concludes my report.
Questions of staff?
Is there any danger, considering the temperatures that we're going to have tomorrow, that work may be put off?
No, the contract, we checked with the contractor, he's going to be proceeding tomorrow.
Mr. Krass, what time do they expect to start working tomorrow?
Thank you, about 8:30.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krass. I would ask that Mr. Cataret make a report for the Community Development Department.
Thank you. Two items. First, the next meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission is scheduled for Tuesday, January 20th at 7 o'clock. The commission will consider a request from the owner-operator of the Golden Corral Restaurant. The request is for a conditional use permit to increase the height of their monument sign from its current 6 feet to 10 feet. That will be a public hearing. And then secondly, just wanted to give a status update to the council regarding our program for sidewalk and undeveloped lots. In our 2014 program, where you held your public hearings back in September of 2014, we have submitted a request for bids that are due on February the 5th, I believe. And we have a total of 51 undeveloped lot segments where sidewalk would be installed. That is down, I believe we had 72 public hearings, so a number of the lots have either installed sidewalk or had a permit issued. So there are 51 lots as part of that program. We propose to bring a award of contract in early March to the council for a contractor to install the sidewalk segments between the months of April 1st and June 30th. Again, these are sidewalk segments in developing subdivisions to fill in gaps where between existing homes. We also this week are sending notices out for our 2015 program. And these will be for the lots that met the threshold between the time period of January 1st of 2014 and January 1st of 2015. So this is an annual program so each year there are new lots being triggered by existing development and development going in on lots. There are a total of 25 lots as part of this program. So we sent those notices out. Those owners will have until August 1st to install the sidewalk. And of those 25, for those that don't install the sidewalk, we'll hold a public hearing sometime in September for those lots. And we've already started the 2016 program, as you can imagine, beginning on January 1st of this year. So we start tracking for the 2016 program as well. So that just gives you an update of where the status is. We do have on the community development page of the Raymore website, we do have identified the lot segments that are part of this program, both the 2014 program and the 2015 program. So anybody interested in seeing what sidewalk segments are part of the program can go to that site and see which lots have been identified. So that concludes staff report.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Thank you.
Apparently I'm getting to dovetail off of everybody's report tonight. Just wanted to remind the council that when we bring that RFP for the work to be done, we'll also be bringing the council in tandem with that a budget amendment to actually pay the contractor for what they're doing before we receive the reimbursement. I would anticipate that budget amendment to be something along the lines of requesting a transfer from the general fund into the restricted revenue fund and or the transportation fund into the restricted revenue fund, so we could be making those payments out of the restricted revenue fund and then reimbursing it back, and then replacing the funds back once all are received at tax time, when everybody pays their property tax bills, which would then be sometime the following January or February. So it would be an extended amount of time for that particular budget amendment. Just wanted to alert you to that, though. Thanks for the report, Jim. I would ask that, I think tonight's Mr. Rulo's night, that he drew the short card to make the report to the Council for Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mayor, and Council. I just wanted to hit a few key notes. Our youth recreation basketball league started last weekend. The first weekend went very smoothly. Our competitive leagues will be starting next week, the week of January 19th. The registrations for volleyball and soccer leagues are currently going on now. They will close the end of February. And also wanted to let everyone know that the Raymore Parks and Recreation had partnered with Boy Scout Troop 427 to host a live Christmas tree recycling event on January 3rd. Basically, for a $5 donation, residents of Raymore could bring their Christmas tree over to Rec Park, drop it off. The Boy Scouts cut all the limbs off, laid them in a pile. Park staff is going to mulch those limbs. We'll use them for landscaping trees and other things. And the Boy Scouts will actually take the trunks of all the trees, and they'll be using them throughout the year during their campouts. So it was a good turnout, a little bit better than last year. About 10, 15 trees. We're hoping that next year we would just keep on increasing. That concludes my report, and I will accept any questions.
Questions of staff? Thank you.
I was going to be hungry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rulo. I would ask that Chief Zimmerman make a report.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn. Mr. Fearborn asked me to come before you all tonight to talk just for a couple of minutes about the passing of South Metro Battalion Chief Chris Tyndall. I'm sure that you all have received some of the information with regard to the funeral arrangements, which will be at the pavilion at John Knox Village. The visitation is tomorrow night from 5 to 8 p.m. And the funeral is Wednesday at 1 p.m. Originally, I think that the time of 2 p.m. was originally broadcast, but that's actually going to be at 1 on Wednesday, January the 14th. With the burial at Lee Summit Historical Cemetery at 3rd Street and 291 in Lee Summit. Our involvement, obviously, we work very closely with South Metro and dispatch for them as well. We'll be utilizing our CERT volunteers. A number of them will be assisting with traffic, both at the funeral and the visitation as well in the parking lots. And we will be providing, the police department will be providing escorts for the outside agencies that will be providing mutual aid coverage, responding to fire and ambulance calls here in Raymore during the time of the funeral and the visitation. So there are a number of agencies that will be staffing all 3 of the South Metro fire stations during that period of time, and because they're not familiar with our city, we'll be providing escorts to them during that period of time, both visitation and funeral. So if y'all have any questions, I'd be happy to.
Questions of staff? Okay.
Not a question, but a comment. Chief, I appreciate your attention to detail in this matter, the communication that you provided for us, and your genuine concern that comes through in all those communications. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Just a couple more items from me, sir. The work session for next Monday night, of course, will be canceled. It is the Martin Luther King holiday. And tomorrow night is the Ward 2 council meeting with the city manager night. And that concludes staff reports, sir.
Thank you. Questions of staff? All right. Move on to committee reports. Got a report from the Roundabout Welcoming Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The subcommittee met tonight with Corey Schultz of Oshner Hair and Hair, and we directed him to come back with a plan of a phasing procedure or a phasing implementation of the roundabout feature, and we will be bringing those hard figures and such to you, to the council on February 9th. We will receive those in our packet, our e-packets on February 4th, I believe, so there's a heads up there for staff and for the rest of the council. So the last communication that I had and sentiments that we got out of the emails was that roundabout subcommittee was directed to come up with some kind of a phasing plan, and I feel that's what we've done, and hopefully we can go forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple of economic development events. I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, question as to this, as to our subcommittee. Since Mr. Westcoat was on that committee and is no longer on the council, are we far enough along? Should we replace him to have an additional member? Or, I mean, do the members of the existing committee think they're good enough to finish out?
Committee?
We're good.
Okay. Economic development events, upcoming ribbon cuttings. On the 23rd of this month, DSW, A, Certified Public Accountants, 118 Remington Plaza, Suite A, 11:30, ribbon cutting. And on the 29th, Salon Bella and Boutique, 1284 West Foxwood Drive, 11:30 also. I'll entertain a motion to dispose of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda, including item A, City Council minutes from December 8th, 2014. Item B, City Council special meeting minutes from January 5th, 2015. And item C, Resolution 15-03, amending the city schedule of fees for the park shelter rental.
Second. Mr. Mayor, I would request that we separate out item C, Resolution 1503, amending the city schedule of fees, park shelter rental. I'd like to have a little bit more discussion on that if possible.
Okay. Item C is removed from the consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of items A and B, council minutes and special council minutes. We have a...
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve items A and B on the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Item C, the resolution 1503, considered separately. Council member?
Yes, sir. I'd spoken with Mr. Fearborn briefly about this morning. He said that he thought Mr. McLean could probably provide a little bit more in-depth information on this. They did provide a memorandum in the packet, and I read that, but I did have a few additional questions if we could be so entertained.
Mr. McLean?
Yes, sir. What may I?
Well,
assist
obviously,
on this?
sure. The gist of this is, we're looking at raising our fees on rentals, mostly of the shelter houses and the park house as well. And I know that we're bringing them up to speed with, comparable cities in the area, obviously. My question that I ask, and I guess I'm looking for a little bit more information on, are we raising those fees because we need to, because of our operational cost, or are we raising those fees because we can?
We are raising the fees because we did a comparison to industry standards in surrounding cities, and our prices were quite a bit lower than what the industry standard is and what our comparable neighboring cities have. So we are raising those in incremental steps. We are still lower than quite a few of those surrounding areas, specifically the park house. We all know how the park house accommodates and what those accommodations are. We took all those into consideration. With those considerations, we still felt that those fees were not helping recover the cost of what we are putting into that facility.
And what type of, what are our costs? Obviously, there's ongoing maintenance and things like that, but, and I realize I'm putting you a bit on the spot, but can you address some of those for me?
Yes, we just currently, over the last 2 weeks, we repainted the whole inside. We had to replace subflooring and tile due to wear and tear, and also the degrading of just the facility itself, or not degrading, but it's normal wear and tear, but also it's age. It's age and the deterioration is what I was looking for, sorry.
I certainly see that with the park house. What about the shelters?
Shelters, that also goes into just what we provide, the services we provide at those shelters and the accommodations at those shelters. We are lower than others in the area, and those ones are just help to maintain, keep up the paint, keep up with new benches and tables, things to that nature. Some of that is also due to vandalism, but most of it is just in offerings.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question would be, is we've compared with surrounding cities and nearby cities and what their fees and structures are. Are they offering substantially more in their amenities in their structures than what we currently do? Or, you know, because what I'm worried about is if we're charging substantially less and they're able to charge substantially more, are their facilities that much better or that much more accessible than what we are?
I don't believe so. No, what we compared to is we compared to Belton, Blue Valley, Harrisonville, Lee Summit, Liberty, and Pleasant Hill. With those being the areas we looked at the size. Some of the shelters are smaller, some are larger. We looked at what are there, like the electrical. Some of ours do not have the electrical, so some of those considerations took into what all services, how close restrooms are, things to that nature. And really we are comparable. We took these fees to the park board, we laid them out and showed them exactly the specifics of it. They approved the fees change based on those amenities that those other facilities have.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion to dispose of Resolution 1503.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 1503, amending the city's schedule of fees for park shelter rentals.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve Resolution 1503. Is there any discussion? Councilmember?
I can support this request. I don't think that the asking of the increase is any great amount. I don't think it's unreasonable whatsoever. However, I like to be able to provide our citizens with the justifications for such an increase. And what I would like to see in the future, if such an increase is asked for, a direct correlation of the cost of our maintenance, whether that be replacement because of vandalism, whether that be a new coat of paint, light bulbs. I realize that creates a little bit of additional work, but I think that's something we owe to our citizens who are the ones we're asking to pay these fees.
Councilmember Abdel-Gawad.
Not to start a debate, and I respect your opinion, but I think this is a decision to be made by the park board and just approved by us.
Councilmember Holman.
Thank you, and I certainly see your point as well. However, we do have approval authority on this, and again, it's anytime that we ask our citizens to pay more money and we're the final approval, it's something that I'd like to have just a little bit more justification on. Again, I don't think the fees are unreasonable whatsoever. We're coming more in line with other cities. I'm fine with that. But I like to be able to tell people, if someone were to ask, why did you raise the fees? Well, it's because, we had 2 vandalisms, we lost 2 picnic tables, we had to paint a coat on every 3 years. It just gives a little bit more background, and that's the reason that I say that. I don't have any problem supporting this one time. I just liked a little bit more meat on the bone for future increases is all I'm asking for.
Heather? A motion and a second. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to unfinished business. The second reading of Bill 3027 by title only.
The second reading of Bill 3027 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending Chapter 110, Mayor and Council of the Raymore City Code, Section 110.010, Qualifications of Mayor, Terms of Office.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve, sorry, I lost my spot. Bill 3027, amending the city code, section 110.010, qualifications of mayor, terms of office.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the second reading of Bill 3027. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
I was just wondering, for the sake of the new council member and the length of time since the last, would the council entertain having staff just make a very brief report?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. I would call on Ms. Warner.
Thank you. The General Assembly recently repealed RSMO Section 115.305, which now requires municipal candidates to comply with RSMO Section 115.342. This outlines certain obligations for candidates to municipal offices. This section requires candidates to affirm they are not in arrears for any state income taxes, personal property taxes, municipal taxes, real property taxes on their place of residence, or they are not a past or present corporate officer of any fee office owing any taxes to the state. The proposed bill enacts these changes in City Code Section 110.010, Qualifications of Mayor, to reflect the statutory changes. On December the 8th, at the first reading, upon the recommendation of the city attorney to change certain language to better address the mayor's qualifications, those changes have been incorporated into the bill for second reading. As a reminder, the change was to the wording "I have" was replaced with "office holder." Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we've already voted on it. Move on to second reading of Bill 3029 by title only.
The second reading of Bill 3029 by title only. An ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the city's schedule of fees and charges as it pertains to Chapter 130, Municipal Court, Section 130.290, Court Costs of the Raymore Municipal Code.
Thank you, sir. In August of 2014, the governor signed into law Bill 1238, which amends Section 488-607 of state statute. In short, this allows the fee for domestic violence, domestic violence surcharge charged in our court to go from a maximum of $2 to a maximum of $4. The council will remember that at its last meeting, it did vote to approve that increase by a unanimous vote. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the second reading of Bill 3029, amending the city fee schedule for domestic violence fees.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the second reading of Bill 3029. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Kellogg?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I fully support this, but I'm going to point out again, like I did last time we voted on this the first time, where I assumed that all cities were going to be doing this, I did find out through reports through our local newspapers. Thank you for that report. You guys do a good job back there. You do. That some of our neighboring communities do not contribute to this, and they haven't upped the fee to $4, and I just want to point that out.
Councilmember Stevens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be voting no on this. I'm not for penalizing folks, even by tacking on fees, and I don't believe it's a city role. It involves collecting charity and redistributing. Our role is governing. Besides, charity is to be given voluntarily and cheerfully. That's not what's being proposed. So I'm voting no.
Other comments? Councilmember Ubal?
I just wanted to say that what other cities do, it does reflect upon what Raymore does. Raymore had its own obligations, and we should do what's best for Raymore, and I think we need to pass this.
Other comments? Okay, Kevin?
I don't know if I want to be editorial or what. I fully support this. I don't see this as charity. I see this as a need. This is not a tax. And what this boils down to is that it's being charged to people who appear before our municipal judge and pay fines to the city court. It can be very easily avoided, which I would be very happy for if we didn't need a municipal judge and we didn't have any infractions of city ordinance. But, I mean, we do. And the law allows it. And not to throw rocks at our neighboring communities, because there's things that we don't do that they do that I'm extremely pleased that they do. This is, this is a passionate issue for me. If somebody doesn't want to pay for this, don't commit the crime.
Comments? Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposition or opposed? We have 7 in favor, 1 opposed. Motion carries. Move on to second reading of Bill 3028 by title only.
The second reading of Bill 3028, an ordinance approving the Third Amendment to the redevelopment plan for 58 Highway West Extended Redevelopment TIF area and approving redevelopment project number 4 and adopting tax increment financing therein.
Mr. Fairborn?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll call on Mr. David Bushek of Gilmore and Bell, the city's Special Economic Development Council, for a 1-minute report.
You have 60 seconds.
1 minute.
Okay, I'm going to time you. Ready? Go.
A very short summary. This TIF plan was originally approved in 2005. There were 4 redevelopment projects as part of that original TIF plan. 3 of those projects have been approved. Project number 4 is approximately 21 acres that's located south of the current Sam's Club site. There's a particular procedural rule that we're dealing with, and that is that all projects have to be approved within 10 years, and that 10 years runs next week. There are 2 safeguards built into consideration here. The first is that this will very likely go back through the TIF Commission because it's known that the development will be of a different scope and magnitude than what the developers presented. Second, there's a condition in the ordinance which provides that there'll be no reimbursement until the parties negotiate a satisfactory TIF contract to both parties. TIF Commission recommended 9-0 for approval, and City Council's first vote last month was 7-0.
Thank you. Yep, right. Just a little bit more than a minute, but that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you. You did well as a fellow lawyer. I'm not used to staying under a minute as well. But I do want to ask, so if we approve this tonight, I know one of the early discussion points was we were under a little bit of a time crunch here. So by approving this tonight, everything is still well within schedule? Yes, it is. The 10 years runs January 23rd, and if you have second, if you approve the ordinance tonight, then that will be within the 10-year time limit.
Thank you. Let's see, motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve Bill 3028, Raymore Galleria Tax Increment Financing District Redevelopment Project 4.
And I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the second reading of Bill 3028. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. And on to new business. Let's see. First item A. Staff report, please. I'll open up the public hearing by asking for a staff report.
Thank you, sir. I'll call on Ms. Warner.
Thank you. Raymore has been notified by the Missouri Department of Revenue that the retail sales tax license of Freedom Stop has been revoked for non-payment of its retail sales tax. A letter was sent to the business on November the 26th providing official notice to the proprietors of Freedom Stop that the establishment's occupational and liquor license has been suspended pending a public hearing on this date before council. After contact from the business owner on December 2nd, 2014, staff advised the owner that they must contact the Department of Revenue to provide a no sales tax letter to the city. This public hearing provides an opportunity for the business owner to address the city council and provide defense or evidence as to why the penalty sanctions should not be imposed. It is recommended that the council conduct a public hearing regarding the suspension or revocation of the occupational license of Freedom Stop and decide on the appropriate course of action.
Thank you. If there's anybody from the public who would like to speak, please come forward, state your name for the record. Keep your comments to under 5 minutes.
Ryan Westcoat, 809 Furlong Drive. You know, the council has always had a history of supporting business in Raymore. And when I was on the council, we actually, we were presented with a very similar situation on 2 separate occasions. One was with McCrew's Pub, and the other one was with Thirsty Ernie's. And in each time, we had granted them an extension. Now with McGrew's Pub, the owner had basically purchased or had taken over the business from her brother. And she had changed the processes and things in place, and she was trying to correct the situation that caused the delinquency. With Thirsty Ernie's, when we granted that extension, it was a new business, somebody who just put processes and things of that nature in place. So with this business, as it's not a new one to Raymore, one of the questions that I would ask is what processes or people have materially changed that's going to make a difference in this business moving forward. In other words, you know, what has been corrected that's going to prevent the situation from happening again? Again, that's just the questions that I would be curious about. Thank you.
Anybody else want to talk? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. And I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, do you need to get a motion on the floor for a discussion?
Mm-hmm.
Then I move that we approve the first reading of the revocation of the occupational license and the liquor license for the Freedom Stop.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the revocation of, I'm sorry? Revoke the license. Discussion? Councilmember?
For me to be able to speak on this, I have to provide a little history to state that I was the attorney that came before this council on behalf of McCrew's Pub, which was when the resident came and spoke, had mentioned my client Carrie McGrew and McGrew's Pub. I know what it feels like to stand before that dais and to communicate with the council to explain the burden that a client can have whenever there's a tax issue before them. I guess to speak appropriately for my client, I do wish to point out that my client's business closed because of a rent issue, not because of a tax issue. And even after her business closed, before she passed away recently, she had been making payments every month to pay the state and for the city to receive their tax dollars. So residents, even when they're facing these types of issues with regulatory agencies, do make sincere efforts to get these things resolved. So just for clarification, McGrew's Pub was not closed because of the sales tax issue directly. One of the things that made the climb over that hill pretty monumental was the fact that trying to communicate with the regulatory agency in Jefferson City can be very difficult. And as a tax attorney, I have to deal with them regularly on various types of taxes. This last June, without being too political, our state decided to cut revenue or cut expenses. They closed all the tax assistance offices throughout the entire state. When I say they closed them, I mean, there is no building that any Missouri resident can walk into today and get a live person to be able to address any tax issue. As a result, and I had a tax issue just this last fall where I even offered to drive to Jefferson City. I was told there is not a door that will be answered to allow you in. You may mail, fax, and call us, and we will get back to you when we can. What normally would take a few days when I was dealing with McGrew's to come in where I could get some sort of resolution within a 3 to 5 day business window was looking at a 3 to 5 week window as it presently stands. I would motion to amend the motion to revoke to allow a 2-month continuance to allow the business owner the opportunity to get whatever is necessary to get this resolved. I don't want to turn this into a long delay, but I do think that with the frustration of the regulatory agency, I think the business owner needs the biggest chance that they can have. So I would move to amend at this point.
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that.
Motion to amend and second. Councilmember?
I have a question of staff, sir, if that's all right.
All righty.
Have we had any communication with the business owner as of recent? Have they communicated anything to us recently about the status of anything?
The last email correspondence was on December the 2nd, like I said before, in which the business owner was advised to contact the Department of Revenue to provide the city with a no tax due letter.
Thank you.
Councilmember, don't go on.
The business owner's here and looked a little confused. I think she would like to speak but didn't understand that her turn was going to be during the public hearing. I think she thought that you would call on her. Is there a chance that we could allow her to come up and speak
We
still?
certainly may. Would you like to come up?
Thank you. I appreciate everybody's comments, everybody's concern. I contacted Ms. Warner on December the 2nd after I received the notice from the city. Freedom Stop's license was not revoked and is not revoked. When we took over the operations of Freedom Stop from the previous operator, the sales tax notification address was not changed when we purchased the shares of the operating company. There was a $70.33 discrepancy on our March 2014 tax return. We did not receive notification of that. When I received notification from the previous operator, I was told that the notification stated that we had, that it had to be paid the following day or it would be revoked. That payment was made before the license was revoked, the $70.33 sales tax additional charge for the month of March. It was paid on the website. In the state of Missouri, the Department of Revenue uses a third-party payment contractor. It did not update their system. They showed it revoked. They reversed the action. The communications that I had with Ms. Warner on December the 2nd, she said that she checked the internal database and it had not yet updated past. It did not show that it was revoked. It showed that the business owner needed to contact the Department of Revenue. I did contact the Department of Revenue. They said they could not provide me with a reinstatement letter because it had not been revoked. So it was my understanding from my conversations with Ms. Warner on December the 2nd that if the database did not update by this January meeting, that we would then have to plead our case to the City Council. I have since spoken with Department of Revenue, and it's my understanding that as of December the 4th, the system was updated and no longer shows revoked. That information can be verified by the City of Raymore on the internal database, and it can also be verified by the public on the Department of Revenue's website, which is whoisnotpaying.mo.gov. It's freely open to the public. Anybody can check the records and find out which sales tax licenses have been revoked. Freedom Stops license has not and is not revoked.
Are we back to debate, or, I have no questions for the applicant, but.
Does anybody have any questions that I might be
Questions
able
for
to
the
answer?
applicant?
Mr. Moorhead suggested a 2-month extension. That sounds like, from what you're telling us, basically we would just use that time to verify what you've told us and make sure everything is straightened out with the state. Does that seem like a reasonable solution to you?
From my perspective, we don't need the 2 months, but I mean, whatever the city needs to do, it's my understanding that the database was updated on December the 4th. So it was my understanding that that database would be checked prior to this meeting. I only learned of this meeting reading the mayor's newsletter last night, same time the city of Raymore received it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
And I think Jeannie will confirm that the city cannot confirm that the license is not revoked. We've received correspondence that it is revoked, and we have been on the website as late as 4 o'clock this afternoon and could not confirm that it is not revoked. The website refers the business owner to the Department of Revenue, not the city of Raymore. We can't go to the Department of Revenue. And I certainly understand the frustration. We can't go anywhere. The owner has to come to us with a letter that says they're not revoked, or that the Department of Revenue has no problem. We can't get it.
As of 1 o'clock this afternoon, I attempted to contact the Missouri Department of Revenue as well. I was required to issue input a PIN number that was issued to the business. I had no access to it. Now, that doesn't mean there may have been other website, there may have been other I have yet to find a format. For me, making the motion, I do have to, all the comments made, what is presented to us today is, do we revoke or do we not? I'm hearing the applicant saying there's no tax due. We're just needing some independent verification. The purpose of my motion is to give whoever has the burden to provide that enough reasonable time to do that without interfering with the business. Somebody can figure out who's going to get on a website tomorrow morning, but as of tonight, the business should be allowed to have a little bit of time to get that together. I don't want to see the disruption of the operation. So it really, to be honest with you, all the discussions are justifying the need for the delay.
Anybody else comment? Okay, there is a motion to amend, main motion. Is there any discussion on the motion to amend? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Back to the main motion as amended.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion on the main motion as amended? All in favor? As amended.
As amended.
As amended. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. That motion carries unanimously. All right. Move on to Bill 3033.
The first reading of Bill 3033 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri vacating a portion of a utility easement located on Lot 174 in Lakeview Addition and resurvey lots 152 through 186, a platted subdivision in the City of Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. I'm calling for a staff report.
Thank you, sir. I'll call Mr. Catarat.
Thank you. Bill 3033 proposes to vacate a portion of a utility easement that exists on property located at 103 South Sunset Lane. This is legally described as Lot 174 of the Lakeview Addition. And the specific request is to vacate the south 3 feet of a 7.5-foot wide utility easement that's located along the north property line of the subject property. In the staff report, I did include a plot plan that shows the utility easement and highlighted the approximate location of the area to be vacated, as well as an aerial photograph that shows the property that does have a fence that surrounds the rear yard of the property and shows, again, the approximate location of the utility easement vacation area. A utility easement vacation does require a public hearing. It was advertised for this evening. I do need to enter into the record the notices that were sent to the adjoining property owners. A notice of publication in the Journal, our Unified Development Code, the application that was submitted, our growth management plan, and the staff report. Also in your report were a couple of site photographs to illustrate the condition of the property. It does show a utility shed that is currently being constructed. That shed's actually located on the south side of the fence. The fence is actually on the property line. And the photographs also illustrate the underground utilities that have been marked. There are 3 separate utilities that are within the easement area, utilities from Comcast, AT&T, and Kansas City Power and Light. All of those utilities are located on the north side of the fence. So they are actually on the adjacent property to the north. I note that the Unified Development Code does not allow the placement of any building that also includes a utility shed within a utility easement. And the specific purpose of the request tonight is to reduce the width of the easement to allow the utility shed to remain in its current location. Again, on the subject property, there's a 7.5-foot utility easement. The property directly to the north also has a 7.5-foot wide utility easement for a total width of 15 feet. With the easement vacation request, if it is approved, that utility easement would be reduced to a width of 12 feet. Again, there are no utilities located on the easement on the subject property. They are all located on the property to the north. As part of this request, again, we notified all the adjacent surrounding property owners. We did not receive any objection from those owners. We also submitted notice to the utility companies, did not receive any objection from any of the utility companies. Staff has submitted proposed findings of fact for this request. We note that the request is the minimum request necessary to allow the shed to remain in its current location. Since the Berry utilities are all located on the adjacent property to the north, again, which is north of the fence, the request seems reasonable and would not negatively impact any property. I believe the circumstances of this is that the shed was constructed initially without the benefit of a permit, so it was the inspector who found the work going on, identified it as being located within the easement, placed a stop work order on the project, so it wasn't allowed to be finished yet until this issue was resolved. The first thing we did was have the utilities marked, and again, if the utilities were on the subject property, it probably would be a different recommendation, but since the utilities are on the north side, the utility companies have looked at it and confirmed they have adequate room to work on the utilities, so they do not object to the easement vacation request. And the staff does recommend the approval of the request. Again, it's reducing the easement from 7.5 feet in width to 4.5 feet in width on the subject property.
Questions of staff? Councilmember Stevens?
If they reduce this, are they still going to be able to get them to do their work like they need to if they have to be in there? Is there still enough room if we grant this request?
There is still enough room. There's 7.5 feet on the north side of the fence, which again, where all the utilities are located at. So there is adequate room there for access.
Councilmember Kellogg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this shed built with footings? Is there footings underneath this, or is this freestanding on top of temporary blocks, or?
It's actually on a slab. It would be secured to a concrete slab.
Did this outbuilding, I'll call it an outbuilding, not a shed, I guess it's not a good thing to call them sheds anymore. Is this within the square footage of an outbuilding that would not require a permit to build or place?
It does require a permit to be placed. And so that would be, if the easement is vacated, a permit would need to be secured for the work.
I guess I'm kind of confused. Was there a permit issued?
No, there has not been a permit issued to date.
Other comments? If there's anybody from the public who would like to speak, come forward, state your name for the record. State your name for the record.
Casey Dial, I live there. Sorry for the inconvenience and all this. It could have been resolved had I gotten an inspection done from the get-go. It's slightly larger than what the code requires, and I didn't know that. Made a big mistake there, obviously. So this all could have been avoided, but I have to hopefully get that vacated, so we might be able to leave it where it's at. Is the goal. So.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's on a concrete slab. We'd have to move it be quite a bit of work to be able to do it. So I was hoping we could get some easement vacated in lieu of trying to move the whole thing. That's what I was hoping for.
Councilmember Kellogg?
Yes. The building is not allowed. It is allowed. What the process is not, you go, I don't say that you were at fault for not getting it inspected. I think where you were at fault was not pulling the permit and getting the proper permit to begin with.
Sorry, that's misspoke. I meant permit.
Yeah. I guess where I'm at is that the placement of it, when I see this, I see a couple different problems, you know, not just the easement, but being so close to the property line. I don't think the UDC allows outbuildings to be that close to the property line. Are we at issue with that?
Thank you for the question. The building will meet the required setback of 5 feet to the wall of the shed. We're asking for an easement vacation beyond where the building will sit. So there's a little bit of room between the edge of the building and the location of the easement.
Okay.
So the building is the required 5 feet from the property line, so it does comply with our codes.
Okay, thank you. That helps me. And that was a good answer from staff in your behalf.
And Jim, I can't say enough good things about him.
Oh, yeah, and that goes without saying.
Time,
You'll hear me
emails,
say the same thing about
everything.
him.
It's been awesome. We appreciate it.
I appreciate your comments, Jim. Thank you for the update. That eases my mind a lot better. I don't want to lecture you, but gosh, always pull a permit, you know, or at least ask. Jim will answer those questions for free, you know.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
please don't ever hesitate to ask staff, because they are more than willing to help, so we don't have to go through this. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Any others like to come forward? Seeing none, close the public comment. And I'll entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3033.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the first reading of Bill 3033, easement vacation, 103 South Sunset Lane.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the first reading of Bill 3033. Comments? Discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I've said what I'm going to say. If this was within that 5 feet setback of the property line, I would not be apt to vote for this. And I'm again, I thank Jim for the clarification. That way I can cast my vote knowledgeably.
Any other comments? Discussion?
You know, when I first started looking at this packet, I kind of struggled with this initially, because really what we're looking at is, you know, to what degree is the nature of the violation versus what's the degree of the remedy. You know, obviously the homeowner could pull the outbuilding a little farther out and be fully compliant. Staff report was very clear to say that that while this is technically a violation, What really stood out to me was the site photographs and the identification that the primary easement line is outside of the fence and is actually in the other property. I guess for the sake of just making a public statement, we're kind of at are we asking for forgiveness rather than permission here tonight? And in this limited instance, because of the intrusion is not that great on the utility, staff makes the positive recommendation. I guess I would say I hope no one's watching this thinking that they should go and violate this. So I don't want to see any kind of further pattern that if we support this, that this is authorization to do this further. But I appreciate that the homeowner came before us and was sincere and honest about that this was a mistake, and that we can write this off as just a harmless mistake. And again, the long-standing fact that the utility line is accessible and is not in jeopardy. Again, I'll just kind of go, sir, please next time, ask the city. We have very responsive staff, and I'll vote to support.
Another comment, Councilmember?
I also, as far as the information from staff saying that they contacted the neighbors and wanted to know their opinion, and that none of the neighbors came forward to complain as well, also held water with me to feel that this is something where we want to educate our citizenry on what we do and how things are done. And I know that I've looked before trying to find permits, and it's not always understandable to somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience with it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. We have the first reading of Bill 3030 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3030 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending various sections of the Unified Development Code of the Raymore City Code.
Staff report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll call on Mr. Cataret.
Thank you. Bill 3030 proposes the 21st Amendment to the Unified Development Code. This amendment is from discussions that the Planning and Zoning Commission had during their 2014 annual review of the Unified Development Code. Since it is a text amendment, it did require a public hearing that was advertised for this evening, a duty to enter into the record our growth management plan, the Unified Development Code, the notice of publication in the Journal, and the staff report that was submitted to you this evening. The bill contains 7 separate sections within it, and each section proposes to amend a specific section of our Unified Development Code. So I'll briefly go through the 7 sections of the bill. Section 1 proposes to modify the general requirements that apply to home occupations. This amendment would prohibit the outdoor display of commodities, products, merchandise, materials, or equipment that's associated with a home occupation. The purpose for this wording is, since the purpose of a home occupation is to limit the visibility of the presence of an occupation being there, we felt that there should not be outdoor display of any merchandise that's associated with the home occupation. The code was not specifically clear on that. Section 2 of the bill proposes to clarify the setback requirement for accessory structures. It does not change the requirement, it's just clarifying language in the code. Section 3 is an amendment that basically identifies how the height of a monument sign is measured. Staff has historically interpreted the code a specific way. We would like the code language to specifically include how we interpret the measurement for the height of a monument sign. And this is specifically when a subject property is lower in elevation than the adjacent street or adjacent sidewalk. And what we have interpreted the code to read is that we will measure the height that's allowed for a sign from the adjacent sidewalk or street level. So if the property, again, is lower than the street height, we allow the base of the sign to be elevated so the height of the sign is still 6 foot from where a vehicle or an individual on the sidewalk would see it. Signs that have utilized this interpretation would include CVS and the Golden Corral. As you're probably aware, both of those sites are lower than the street level themselves. So it's just clarifying how we measure that sign height. Section 4 of the ordinance proposes to clarify the process in which to request a sign that's not allowed by the UDC or is allowed but not in conformance with the standards of the UDC. What we are proposing here currently, if a sign is allowed by our code and a property owner wants to increase its height or increase its size, that request goes to the Planning Commission as a conditional use permit and then on to City Council. If a sign is not allowed at all, the only process is to go for a variance. And the findings that are necessary in order to grant a sign that's not allowed by the code as a variance, it's a very high threshold. And it only seemed appropriate to staff and the Planning Commission through the recommendation that if an individual is requesting a sign, whether it's allowed or not allowed by code, the appropriate process would be as a conditional use permit. So we're just clarifying the process that if you have a request regarding a sign, it goes through the conditional use process, public hearing with the Planning Commission, public hearing with the City Council. Section 5 of the ordinance proposes to amend language regarding the platting of lots. Currently, we do not allow any residential lot to be platted within the floodplain area. This proposed amendment would extend that prohibition to non-residential lots. Section 6, again related to language of our sign code, and this language would amend and clarify that a variance is not an option to deviate from the standards of the sign chapter. The only way to deviate from the sign chapter is through the conditional use permit process. And the 7th section of the proposed ordinance would define the terms subject property and undeveloped lot. Those are terms we use in the UDC. They needed to be defined. The Planning Commission did submit proposed findings regarding this text amendment, and it was at their December 16th meeting when they voted 8-0 to accept the findings and forward this case, the 21st Amendment to the UDC, to the Council with a recommendation of approval. And they did include the meeting minutes from their discussion on this matter of December 16th. So that concludes staff report.
Thank you. And this does require a public hearing, so I'll open up the public hearing. Questions?
Jim, does this consideration take into account perhaps any future mixed-use, lower retail, upper residential? Does it have any impact on that type of development?
Not that I can see. I mean, the sign code does address any type of commercial use, whether it's a freestanding commercial building or commercial with residential above. I don't see where any of the amendments would affect or change that in any way.
Jim, I want to draw your reference to in the very beginning regarding home occupations on B3, subsection D and E. With the change of the word display and then the reference in E of no signs are permitted, things I've seen, I want to be careful how this gets interpreted. So I'm curious how the discussion went on this, because we have a number of home occupations where there are construction companies that in essence work out of their home. They advertise on their trucks. The interpretation of displaying the product or merchandise being on the truck and that no signs are permitted, was that brought up in the discussion? And do you feel that these two sections could inadvertently imply that if you're not allowed to put a sign, putting a sign on a truck and then putting it in the driveway is the same thing as having a sign? Could that be construed that way?
Good question. I don't recall if the commission specifically discussed it as part of this amendment, but I know there has been discussion in the past when we dealt with the sign code in general. There's a section of the sign code dealing with vehicle signs. So we specifically regulate signage on a vehicle through that chapter of the code, different from the home occupation section. So it is legal to have a sign on a vehicle parked in a driveway, whether the business is occupied there or not occupied there. So I believe that's where we address that issue.
We did address this on planning and zoning. I talked about businesses. I think I used the words, my favorite, home and cooling guy. I wanted him to be able to have his truck in his driveway as he works out of his home. And so we did discuss that on P&Z.
Anybody from the public like to come forward? Okay, I'll close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3030.
Mr. Mayor,
Mhm.
I move that we approve the first reading of Bill 3030, the 21st Amendment to the Unified Development Code.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the first reading of Bill 3030. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. And you have the reading of Resolution 1502 by title only.
The reading of Resolution 15-02 by title only. A resolution of the City of Raymore, Missouri designating members to serve on boards and directors of the Fox Ridge Community Improvement District, the Hubach Hill Road and North Cass Parkway Community Improvement District, the Jeter Farm Community Improvement District, the Raymore Galleria Community Improvement District, the 58 Highway Regional Market Center Community Improvement District, the Hubach Hill Road and North Cass Parkway Transportation Development District, the Belton Raymore Interchange Transportation Development District, and the Foxwood Village Shops Community Improvement District for one-year periods designated herein beginning 2015.
Thank you. Staff report?
Thank you, sir. I will call on Mr. Rich Wood, Special Economic Development Council from Gilmore and Bell.
More than 1 minute. Thank you. Good evening. I'll let Mr. Bushwick know that I got more time than him. This resolution is intended to streamline the process of appointing the board members to your various special taxing districts in the city. You currently have 8 districts that all operate as separate political subdivisions. Each of those districts has its own board of directors, which governs the district. The process for appointment of the board members is the mayor appoints with the advice it gets into the council. The board member terms are staggered based on between the various boards based on when the district was formed. So what you have is the terms of the various board members for each of the districts expiring at different times throughout the year. So in the past, as a board member's term would expire, city staff would bring forward a resolution to reappoint a member to that board. So you would have numerous resolutions throughout the year. This resolution is intended to make all the board appointments for the upcoming year all in one resolution at the beginning of the year. It also has the added benefit of listing all the board members who are currently serving on each of the boards. So each year when you see this resolution, you're going to see all the 5 or 4 or whatever board members that are currently serving on that boards. So it's a way for you all to track who's serving on all those various boards. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to dispose of Resolution 1502.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 1502. Is there any discussion? Councilmember?
I just have a quick question that hopefully probably has a very quick answer. On a lot of the boards, it lists the Assistant City Administrator with her current term as some date 2012. Considering she's new, I'm wondering does the paperwork just say Assistant City Manager, and that's why it would
Unfortunately,
read
that
way?
won't be a quick answer. Mr.
Oh,
Wood's
sorry.
going to have to come up to the front.
I missed part of the question.
Okay, and on this it says, like, next to the Assistant City Manager's name, it says current term is July 23rd, 2012 through July 22nd, 2016. Like, for example, in the Raymore Galleria. Is she just started here, so she wasn't on that committee in 2012.
She is filling the place of another person whose term
Okay,
started
and that was
then.
kind of my
So I didn't
question.
need to call him up after all.
Okay.
Other discussion? Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. The first reading of Bill 3034 by title only, please.
The first reading of Bill 3034 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the contract with the Raymore Chamber of Commerce.
Staff report, please.
Thank you, sir. At the joint work session that the City Council had with the Raymore Chamber of Commerce on December 1, I presented to you all and to the Chamber for consideration a recommendation that the $6,000 that the city pays for the support they receive from the Chamber of Commerce each year be amended from the current payment of $1,500 per quarter to one payment of $6,000 per year to be made no later than April 1 of any given year. Kind of a twofold process with that. Number one, it helps the chamber to track their cash flow, but more importantly, it keeps us from having to go through the administrative burden of repeating a cycle 4 times a year where we guarantee them the $6,000 anyway each year. That concludes staff report, sir.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3034.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the first reading of Bill 3034, amendment contract to the Raymore Chamber of Commerce.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the first reading of Bill 3034. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. We have the first reading of Bill 3036 by title only.
The first reading of Bill 3036 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with ETC Institute, Inc. for the development and administration of a citizen survey.
Staff report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll call on Assistant City Manager Meredith Howell.
Great. Good evening. Thank you. Every 2 years, the city conducts a statistically significant survey of the citizens. This contract would engage ETC Institute to conduct this survey for us in 2015. We've used ETC a number of times in the past, and continuing to use them allows us to track not only internal performance trends, but allows us to compare our results with other communities in the metro who also utilize ETC survey for this. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions of staff?
Yes.
Okay.
Will we have an opportunity to look at and review the questions and possibly change them, or is that stagnant?
No, we will be back on February 2nd to allow the board the opportunity to take a look at those questions and provide feedback.
And would I be correct in our assumption? I know from our Civic Center survey, the minimum valid amount was 300. Is that correct for our population size?
It's actually 400. For
Okay, so we would want to get at least 400 back in response. Okay, thank you.
They guarantee 400 back.
Yeah.
Other questions of staff? Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3036.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the first reading of Bill 3036, excuse me, ETC Citizen Survey Agreement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the first reading of Bill 3036. Any discussion? Councilmember Stevens?
Mrs. Eubuck, could you talk a little louder when you do that?
Okay. Okay. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. On the next one, we have 2 alternatives. So may we have the reading of Bill 3031 and a description of alternative A and B.
I'll begin with the staff report, if I may.
Okay.
Senate Bill 1181, enacted by the General Assembly in 2008, established the Show Me Green sales tax holiday in Section 144.526 in RSMO. The Show Me Green sales tax holiday exempts the sale of certain Energy Star certified appliances from state tax and takes place annually in April of each year. Municipalities may choose to participate in the holiday in the 1 year only, or choose to participate in perpetuity. Since establishment of the holiday in 2008, the City Council has elected on an annual, 1 year basis only, to approve the sales tax holiday. I'll
And if-
entertain whichever
Okay.
version to read the title
Thank
of.
you.
To continue with your past practice, the council would be asking for a reading of Bill 3031, Alternative A.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we approve Bill 3031, Alternative A, specifically noting to participate solely in 2015.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve Bill 3031, Alternative A. Councilmember Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've asked this question before, and I'm going to ask it again because we've got a new city manager now. This involves state tax. We have city sales tax. Does the green tax, the Show Me Green sales tax, include the city sales tax exemption also? To not collect that during that period?
What this particular one is about is the city waiving the city sales tax on purchases that apply to Energy Star appliances.
The reason why I'm asking this, and I don't mean to cut you off, but the reason why I'm asking this is because probably now 2 years back when I bought my new appliances, I specifically waited, and I bought my appliances that were energy efficient, and during that time, and the only taxes that were waived were the state sales tax. The sales representative, when I bought those, went back and pulled the state, or not the state, but the city rates that we charge, and they charged me for that. I protested at the time. But anyway, that's what my question is. I want to make sure that we are foregoing those city sales taxes that we do assess.
We do. The issue becomes, in addition to this, and you may remember this was a discussion with the council last year, a number of these locations, and thank you for reminding me of this, Ms. Warner, this afternoon, a number of these locations are located in incentive districts within the city.
Yes.
And the incentive districts have their own vote as to whether or not they want this to apply to those sales taxes associated. And the council reminded us to make sure that all of those incentive districts are also voting on that. We don't have total control over all of those incentive districts, but for the most part, staff does control the board. So our vote mirrors the council's.
Mr. Fearborn, especially hearing that, and that's news to me too, because, well, normally I would say, hey, a tax professional might be able to, hey, you have 1 year statute of limitations left to get a refund. Hearing that, that's something I wouldn't have been aware of either, and I'm voting on this, so a citizen's not going to know any more than I do. Is there a way we can put on our website, when we state or remind citizens of this tax holiday, what districts, because they have to vote ahead of the date, what districts are not participating in this, or which ones are, so at least residents have a chance to be able to identify maybe they're going across the street to buy an item versus on the other side.
We absolutely can.
Okay.
Councilmember Stevens.
Do these sales tax holidays, do they coincide with appliance sales that some of our retailers have? Do we do that?
The retailers are definitely aware of this particular holiday, and I know I have in the past seen advertisements that the same that with the 1st of August being the school sales tax holiday, they do advertise around that for sure.
Any other? We have a motion and a second for Bill 3031A. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. The first reading of Bill 3035 by title only, please.
The first reading of Bill 3035 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the contract with the Raymore Chamber of Commerce.
Staff report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll call on Ms. Watson.
If I may stand corrected, I believe I just read the incorrect title from my electronic version of minutes.
Okay.
The first reading of Bill 3035 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Vogel Traffic Services, Inc. for the purchase of an Easy Liner pallet striper in the amount of $64,150.
Thank you, Mr. Fairborn. Mayor, Council, the Public Works Department currently contracts out general street striping services and uses a small walk-behind for touch-up and intersection work. A truck-mounted striper would allow for complete annual street striping citywide as well as 58 highway twice a year versus contract striping every 2 years. The initial purchase cost savings would be approximately $25,000 annually. Staff has determined by taking advantage of the MARC Cooperative Purchasing Program, it is the best and most cost-effective method for the purchase, and staff recommends this purchase.
Questions of staff? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to dispose of first reading of Bill 3035.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the first reading of Bill 3035, award of contract for the purchase of a paint striper.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve 3035. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Kellogg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I appreciate the report we got on that. That's a 3-year payback. Very excellent purchase recommendation. My question is, what is the life expectancy on a piece of equipment like this?
We will be verping this particular piece of equipment, so you will actually see it in the operational fund. I think that we've put this one down equivalent to a truck, have we not? A heavy-duty truck?
Yes.
So 10 years, sir.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Woolman.
I think this is an exceptional initiative. This is one of the first things that I brought forward. I know I'm not the first person to come up with it, but it's one of the first things I brought forward when I came onto council. It probably sounds boring. It's probably not going to make the paper. That's fine. But anybody here that's driven in a snowstorm or a nighttime rainstorm and you're trying to find those lines, you're going to appreciate this thing when that happens. I know I will, and again, I think this is fantastic. I commend staff for their work on this, the report, and Mr. Furborn for your ability to get it into the budget without an increase. Great work. Thank you.
Councilmember Kellogg.
Thank you, and I completely agree with you, Jay. It's one of those opportunities that, you know, I probably should have said this in my comments before, but I can't resist this now, that I see this as what I've said all along, you know, and I've asked questions in meetings with staff. Is there anything staff can use that would help them do the best that they can do? This is one of those examples, so thank you.
I just want to say thank you for this recommendation. I'm always in favor of items that allows our city to be more self-sufficient and self-reliant. That's a principle that strong cities are built on.
There's a motion and a second to approve Bill 3035. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. That takes care of all that. I'll open the floor for public comment. Please keep your comments to under 5 minutes. Seeing no one coming forward, I'll close public comment.
Good evening. With the energy saving appliance is I'm new to it all, so if I miss something, bear with me. since it's just for, believe me, April, if I was, or for 1 month a year, or a time period?
1 weekend in April.
1 weekend. Well, I just had to replace my refrigerator like 2 days before Thanksgiving. So it kind of, if it wasn't cold outside, my food would all been, ruined. So I did buy a energy-saving appliance, not because it was energy-saving appliance, it's because the boss said, I like that one. But in cases like that, is there a way that the project or whoever, unless I know it's part of the state law, can amend it that anybody that buys an energy-saving appliance anytime during the year can still get the credit of it by not paying the tax? Because in this case, and I'm not saying it just for me, I'm sure a lot of people just don't buy their appliance for that 1 weekend a year. They break all the time. So something for consideration?
Yeah, replace it.
Councilmember
I've got a little experience in this area because I bought a refrigerator myself during the green holiday last year. What we voted on tonight was our portion of the sales tax, and we tack it on to what the state allows for that weekend. So the state knocks off their portion, we knock off our portion, and then if you have other taxing districts, as Mr. Fuelborn mentioned, if they've decided to knock it off, you may get a reduction in your sales tax, or you may not get any of it. On top of that, I think Mr. Kellogg asked, or no, I'm sorry, Mr. Stevens asked if the retailers participate, and they do. Lowe's gave an additional 10% off in addition, that's just one example, as well as 18-month financing if you use a credit card. So everybody jumps on the bandwagon. Obviously, it increases their sales across the board. But it's not just one entity, I guess, is the bottom as far as us saying, hey, yeah, we can do this for anybody at any time. We can do our portion, and we tack it on to the state. So I hope that kind of explains it a little bit more for us.
I was just thinking, not just to myself, it's already done with, but for other people, you don't know when your appliance is gonna die on you. And as long as you buy an energy-saving an appliance, regardless of what time during the year, you should get some benefit for it. It'd be more of an incentive for everybody in the community to buy a better appliance that uses less electricity or gas. Thank you.
Mr. Fuelborn?
And unfortunately, this particular law, and I think I understand what you're asking, Mr. Sarsfield. Unfortunately, we have to operate on being able to allow this within the parameters of what's been established within state statute, which is only for that very defined amount of time. So,
Councilmember Kellogg?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, is that we're only allowed to do this for that weekend. And this comes before the council every year. It has every year since I've been on this council, and we approve it every year. It's just like the going back to school sales tax forgiveness and all that. The one thing that I might suggest, on your income taxes, check and see if there is a tax credit there for that benefit. I know that when I replaced my windows and when I did buy some energy efficient appliances during the Obama money, that I was allowed a certain amount of tax credits for it. So I don't know that exists out there, but I would counsel you to talk with your tax consultant about that question.
All right, we'll move on to Mayor Council Communication. Mr. Boehner, you're first this evening.
I don't have any comment.
Okay. Mr. Stevens, you're next.
No comment.
Councilmember Kubach?
No comments.
Councilmember Burke?
I just wanted to, once again, I don't know if I got a chance to thank the council last week. I did volunteer for more work, and I did read over 250 pages of the packet. I will admit I didn't read every line and some of the TIF, but I also did some research on TIFs today, and I'm enjoying learning new things, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Councilmember Kellogg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a question, probably asked to you or possibly staff. With the new Councilmember Burke filling in for former Councilmember Westcoat, I believe he sat on the tax committee, the tax review committee. Am I correct?
That is correct, sir. It is our intention, just like last year, to bring the License Tax Review Committee. It's every 2 years, and it is up in February coming up, and it is our intention to consult with the mayor and make a determination on who all those committee members will be.
Okay,
And we'll be bringing that to you in resolution form.
That's what, the other thing that I would bring up in my comments is, Chief Zimmerman, thank you for all of the information you've given us over the last couple of days, like Mr. Holman spoke about earlier today. It is a huge help. Prayers and thoughts go out to that family and the friends and all of his co-workers. We definitely lost a hometown hero. So again, thank you for everything. Pass along my thanks to all the entities that will be helping us out. And keep up the good work, stay safe, and pass along that to all the officers also. Thank you.
Councilmember Abdel-Gawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to take a minute and officially, now that they're sworn in, welcome Judge Nigro and Councilmember Burke to our staff.
Councilmember Moorhead.
I'll piggyback on that. It was great to see all the recognition tonight for all the members that came before us. A lot of people have made a lot of contributions to the city, and I'm very appreciative of that. I want to point out that it's been a month, and I'm humbled by the fact that I wasn't around here for a month, and it was great to drive around the city and see all the wonderful things just humming. So I have to commend staff who really are the ones driving the car, not us, and all the wonderful work that they did over the holidays and they do every day. I had a wonderful opportunity to sit at lunch today and have a conversation with someone who went to school with Battalion Chief Tyndall and learned a lot about him just as a person, which was very inspiring. And something that touched me tonight a great deal was to hear all the other agencies willing to come forward to help, especially while our participants are mourning and celebrating the loss and the life of Mr. Tyndall. And to hear, with our law enforcement agency helping them as well. Just seeing that whole collective effort was very inspiring, and I want to commend them as well. I want to thank, I want to welcome and thank Mr. Burke for joining the team. I do have to say, I'm not sure you're really fully a council member, though, until you really read the whole TIF packet. You haven't swum in the pool yet until you dive into that wonderful reading. But I'm glad to have a fellow member of Ward 2, and so I look forward to working with you. And I must say to the mayor, Mr. Mayor, for the last 25 months, you have called me Mr. Westcoat. So now with Mr. Westcoat gone, I'm waiting to see if I get called Mr. Burke. Or vice versa.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Holman.
A couple things, sir. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Burke. You did better in your first meeting than I did in mine. I still remember the error. I tried to second the nomination of someone for mayor pro tem, and the mayor corrected me on that. So I came up to speed quickly. You did a lot better. Second point for Mr. Sarsfield. In addition, KCP&L does offer a credit for certain appliances. I know refrigerator is one of them because I took advantage of that. Not only do they have a credit for the purchase of the refrigerator if it's a greater energy saver than your previous model, but for the proper disposal of your previous model as well. So I think it's up to $175. So there's a multitude of things there. It sounds like you were already obviously aware of that. The only thing I'm going to reiterate my position on the striper. I am as excited about the paint striper as Mr. Feuerborn gets about the budget. That ought to say it all right there. and yeah. The last thing I want to say is, Pete's looking at me like I have three heads. I certainly agree with all the comments on the easement vacation tonight, but I also had to admire and feel for Mr. Dial. man's trying to build a project, obviously inexperienced, and realized that he made a mistake. And he's got to jump through a bunch of hoops to get that project on track. Staff, it sounds like just an outstanding job with him, getting him to where he needed to be able to do the things. He's still not quite finished, and then he's got to come in front of us and talk a little bit. So, that's the kind of spirit that you want to see. It's, oh gosh, it's kind of starting from scratch and now a whole bunch of new hurdles in front of me. And that one just really struck me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I don't know what I could add. You do have reason to go into executive session this evening.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn to executive session to discuss litigation matters as authorized by 610.021 subsection 1 in real estate act.
How about discuss
Well, I'm
real
reading
estate?
just subsection 2, sorry. Real estate acquisition matters as authorized by 610.021 subsection 2.
I second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Excuse me. Councilmember Abdelgawad?
Yes.
Councilmember Boehner?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
Councilmember Hubach?
Yes.
Councilmember Kellogg?
Yes.
Councilmember Moorhead?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Okay, we will go into executive session. We'll reconvene only to adjourn the main meeting.